Although the event took place a long time ago, yet it has very significant present-day implications. I think the first important implications for us is that when those in power are trying to destroy historical records or to reinterpret historical events favorable to them, then I think the ordinary people has the responsibility to come up and preserve historical data. Now, as you can see, the archives in Hong Kong vanished. That means those in power want people to forget this history. I remember the Czechoslovakian poet in exile, Mr. Milan Kundera. He once said that man's struggle against power is the struggle between remembering and forgetting. Now, since those in authority want to delete this page in history, then as ordinary people, we have the responsibility to try our very best to preserve the historical data. And therefore, I think Connie has done a marvelous job in helping our society to preserve that very important page in Hong Kong's history. Now then, after the handover, the SAR government took a proactive activity to rewrite history. Now, from the film, you can see that the riot itself is a terrorist activity, especially at the time of the Cultural Revolution, when across the border the Red Guards are hailing the so-called Red Terror. Long live the Red Terror. That was the slogan used by the Red Guards in China. And this, since the 1967 riot was a spillover into Hong Kong of the Cultural Revolution, therefore people adopt highly terrorist activities in Hong Kong. And yet soon after the handover, the SAR government took initiative to try to reinterpret history. In 2001, just 4 years after the handover, Chief Executive Dong Zhiwa awarded the Grand Bohemian Medal to Yang Guang, the iconic figure in the riot. This completely toppled the value system in Hong Kong, because our ongoing value system considered the riot as a terrorist activity, and yet the SAR chief executive awarded the city's highest honor to a guy who tried to bring about chaos and terror to the territory. So it completely changed the value system in Hong Kong. And I think this is very bad. Now, why should they do so? Now, in the film, you can see that both our first chief executive and our Dong Zhiwa, and our first Attorney General, Ms. Elsie Leung, both came from the Zhonghua Middle School that produced the bombs in their laboratories. Given this background, you will be able to understand why they are so keen to rewrite history. And since the SAR chief started this initiative to rewrite history, we can we saw gradually people trying to say that the bombing of the two young kids was not their responsibility. And then the killing of the broadcaster Lam Bun, who was burned to death, was the legislator, the pro-establishment legislators, claimed that these are not the deeds by the left-wing sector. So they all try to reverse history. They try to whitewash their responsibility. So I think the present-day implication of this is that we by revisiting this event, we try to uphold some historical facts. Unfortunately, lately, just about a week ago, the Hong Kong government decided that the local history would not include this page in the curriculum. Now, I think this is very bad because, again, it shows that the SAR government is bent on deleting this page in history. The guy who explained why it should not be included in the school curriculum, he said that this is the 1967 riot is but a very trivial event. Is it trivial? I mean, people have claimed that the 1967 riot was a watershed in Hong Kong's history, and yet in government's eyes, this is a very trivial thing, and therefore it should be excluded from the school curriculum. Now, since the SAR government is bent on forgetting this page, we ordinary citizens have a very strong burden to try to preserve such historical records. Now, this is my first take on the present-day significance of this, of revisiting this page. The second reason why it is significant is that those who brought about the riot 50 years ago has now become those in power. If you look at the government structure, you'll find that it's almost exactly the same stock of people that started the riot 50 years ago. Now, I think this simple fact goes a long way to explaining why Hong Kong experienced such a deep crack in a deep cleavage in the past several years since the handover. Why? Because those in power today were exactly the same sort of people who try to bring about chaos and division into Hong Kong 50 years ago. I can give you a very simple example. For example, the former chief executive Leung Chun-ying has once told his top advisor that our relation with the pan-democratics in Hong Kong is a relation belonging to the antagonistic contradiction. Now, the term antagonistic contradiction is a communist term, a communist jargon, meaning 对抗即係敵我矛盾, meaning that we are enemies. Now, if the chief executive of Hong Kong consider more than half of the population in Hong Kong as his enemy, would there be harmony in the society? Definitely not. I mean, the Pan-Dems in Hong Kong, by most popular votes, they represent more than 55 to 60% of the population in Hong Kong. And yet, the chief executive consider the Pan-Dems as a relation between enemies. Then obviously his policy would not be conducive to a harmonious society. And this shows that the chief executive and those who brought about this riot share the same ideology: class struggle, the fight between enemies, and things like that. Since they share the same ideology, therefore they will bring about chaos, divisions, and cleavage in Hong Kong society. So I think the second important modern day implication is to allow us to understand why Hong Kong in the past 20 years sees so much division and conflicts. The third present day implication is that we have to be vigilant about the possibility of another wave of left-wing extremism from attacking Hong Kong again. Now, 50 years ago, the riot was a direct export of China's Cultural Revolution into Hong Kong. Will there be another Cultural Revolution? Now, the problem is that this possibility cannot be entirely ruled out. I remember in 2012, the former Premier Wen Jiabao has said during his last press conference as Chinese Premier, he warned publicly that China has to be watched out for another Cultural Revolution. Wen Jiabao, in his capacity as Chinese Premier, he obviously sees and knows more than us that the likelihood of a Cultural Revolution is looming large. That's why he felt obliged to signal the warning. Now, of course, in the past several years, we can see that this shift towards leftist extremism is taking place. For example, in this slide, you can see that the frequency of the word communism as appear in the People's Daily. So it experienced a secular decline. Between 85 to 88, the term communism, the frequency of the appearance of this term in People's Daily, the official mouthpiece, you see a secular decline. However, when Xi Jinping came to power, it reversed, the trend was reversed. There is a secular increase of this term. Now, this is a very significant trend, exposition of how the mentality is gradually changing. And unfortunately, the recently ended 19th Party Congress seems to confirm this worrying trend. You see, these are the front page of the People's Daily after the Party Congress, all the major Party Congress. The front page story of the Party Congress. You can see that a very significant change. See? Now, if you are well versed in Chinese politics, you can immediately spot that this trend meant that Xi Jinping has reversed two major architectures built in by Deng Xiaoping to prevent the recurrence of the Cultural Revolution. These two architectures that Deng Xiaoping built was that to do away with personality cult, and that was written into the party constitution. Secondly, to have collective leadership in order to avoid over-concentration of power in one man's hand. So since Deng Xiaoping built these two architecture, all the major party congress basically follow this tradition until Xi Jinping came to power. He reversed this trend towards collective leadership. And by doing so, he also built up his own personality cult. Now, this is a very worrying sign. And then, again, this is another worrying sign. What does it say? All the major newspapers in China has identical coverage and format of this major report. Now, this occur, of course, this commonly occur during the Cultural Revolutionary times. After 1978, when Deng Xiaoping started to open up the door and reform, this kind of situation never occurred. In my memory as a journalist for the last 30 years, I didn't recall this kind of arrangement. But now, unfortunately, something similar to the Cultural Revolution recur again. And then swearing. Xi Jinping took the entire Standing Committee of the Politburo to Shanghai to swear again. Now, it shows that Xi Jinping is trying to, if you look at the video, it shows that everyone has to follow Xi Jinping sentence by sentence. Again, this try to establish Xi Jinping as the paramount leader. And what is worrying about this is that Xi Jinping stressed in this occasion, never forget the original purpose of establishing the Communist Party. Now, what is the original purpose of the Communist Party? It is class struggle. It is trying to replace the bourgeois with the proletariat. I mean, this is the message, a very strong message that China may go back to this emphasis on class struggle. Okay, now, since the 19th Party Congress seems to confirm what Wen Jiabao has strongly, emphatically warned 5 years ago about the possibility of a comeback of the Cultural Revolution, then we people in Hong Kong has to be vigilant. Would there be let's say if the Cultural Revolution, this return, this comeback of the Cultural Revolution is to affect Hong Kong, who will be there to resist it? 50 years ago, when the Cultural Revolution spilled over into Hong Kong, it was the British there that put up strong resistance against it, thereby securing for Hong Kong a relatively peaceful environment. Now, if such left-wing extremism is again to affect Hong Kong, don't forget that those in power today, the British has gone, of course, and those in power today were exactly the same sort the same stock of people that imported the Cultural Revolution into Hong Kong 50 years ago. So who will be there to help to save Hong Kong from any extremism from China? That is an issue that warrants everybody's very serious attention. So I think by revisiting this episode 50 years ago, it draws our attention to many of the imminent dangers that will be coming in our way. So I think that was the significance of revisiting this page in Hong Kong's history. Thank you very much.